I'm sure we've all had our breakfast and we're rejuvenated and ready for the remaining program, for the workshop. While I wait for the noise to go down so that we can kickstart this program. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we want to kickstart the second phase of our workshop. I would also like to appreciate those joining us via Zoom. I'm sure they're still on their system waiting for us to start. We appreciate their patience because we are starting a bit behind time. So I appreciate their patience while I wait for us to settle down. Thank you very much. We're about to kickstart the second phase of the workshop, and we'll be having a paper presentation, the overview of SPIN project and dam safety components by Engineer Epilaye Olaiya, who will be represented by the head technical units of dam, Engineer Amina Binuyo. Sorry, Bob. Excuse me, I would like to repeat that again. Engineer Amina Binuyo. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. So the name is, I don't quite know how to say it very well myself, so we can say it anyhow. So I'm Engineer Amina Imam Binio, and I'm representing the National Project Coordinator, Engineer Epilaye Olaiya. I'll be going through his presentation. Is it there? Oh, it's not, they're not projecting? Okay. So I'll be giving a presentation on the overview of the SPIN project and the dam safety component. Okay, I can be doing it. I can do it. Okay. The SPIN project, which is a sustainable power and irrigation for Nigeria. So we'll be giving a brief overview that will take us through description of the SPIN project itself, project development objectives, project components, and maybe not some of these other ones, and then the current implementation status of the project. So I'll give a little general context that came about the development of the SPIN project in the first place. So Nigeria faces critical challenges in water resources, energy, and food security, exacerbated by the poor condition of its over 400, 600 dams, crucial for irrigation and hydropower. This is compounded by the nation's increasing vulnerability to climate shocks, including floods, water scarcity, extreme heat, and wildfires, further threatening livelihoods, impacting hydropower potential, and risking significant GDP loss. Recognizing the centrality of dam safety and improved water infrastructure management to climate change adaptation and mitigation, the World Bank supported SPIN project aims to address these issues by modernizing irrigation, enhancing dam safety, and strengthening water resources management practices across selected dams in Nigeria, building on the successes of previous initiatives to bolster food security and climate resilience. The Sustainable Power and Irrigation for Nigeria project is a $500 million initiative supported by the World Bank aimed at enhancing Nigeria's water security, boosting agricultural productivity, and increasing clean energy generation through strategic investments and institutional reforms in the water resources sector. The main project development objective of SPIN is to strengthen dam safety and improve management of water resources for hydropower and irrigation in selected areas in Nigeria. So we have some of the project development objective level indicators. So by the time we do this project and we do it successfully, these are the indicators that will show us if we've done a good job. For dam safety, strengthening, people protected from floods and droughts through enhanced dam safety operations will be measured in terms of numbers. Improved water resources management for hydropower and irrigation in selected areas of Nigeria. We would see that federal, state, and state irrigation schemes under the project are managed by functioning water user associations, which will be seen in percentage. Areas provided with new or improved irrigation or drainage services will be seen in terms of hectare. People benefiting from this new improved irrigation and drainage services will also be assigned an indicator. A hydropower master plan will be prepared and a PPP transaction will be produced structured for a hydropower project jointly by the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and the Federal Ministry of Power. So these are the SPIN project components. We have 4 components of the SPIN project. Component 1 is institutional strengthening and capacity building for water resources management. Component 2 is irrigation modernization. Component 3, dam operations improvement and dam safety enhancement. And then component 4 is on project management. So briefly, I will take us through component 1 and 2 because those are the ones that are specific to dam safety and the Department of Dams and Reservoir Operations. So on component 1, which is institutional strengthening and capacity building for water resources management, an overview is that the SPIN project will focus on strengthening institutions and building capacity for water resources management at the federal, state, and river basin levels to promote integrated water resources management and achieve food, water, energy nexus in Nigeria. This component is aimed to institutionalize and scale up successful approaches from the SPIN project, which incidentally will be rounding up in a few days. So some of the key objectives and activities under component 1 include strengthening regulation, developing and adopting the national dam safety guidelines and protocols, which was mentioned to us earlier. It is the first assignment or objective of the project. It will be led by the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and is a performance-based condition, which means that if the ministry is not able to do this, we will not be able to access the funds that are available for us to use for the dam safety component. And for the irrigation side, it will be developing and updating water laws to legally recognize water user associations in participating states. This is actively being done right now because all the states that have shown interest in being part of this project have enacted their WUA laws in their states, and some of them are ongoing. So another of the activities is bundling irrigation and dam safety, prioritizing investments in bundled irrigation, rehabilitation, and dam safety for related dams based on specific criteria, and promoting and institutionalizing collaborative water resources management, fostering collaboration among irrigation, dams, and hydropower stakeholders. Then the last objective will be the strengthening integrated hydropower planning, jointly developing a hydropower master plan and preparing at least one priority hydropower project by the Federal Ministry of Power and Federal Ministry of Water Resources, which also is a performance-based condition. So I will move to component 3, which is specifically on the improvements in dam operations and enhancing dam safety. So this is an overview of that component. The component will strengthen the dam safety management system in the country and will rehabilitate and improve the safety of prioritized dams and associated appurtenances. It is, however, good to note that the SPIN project will not be financing the construction of new dams. Planned activities are not intended to alter the original schemes and change in their nature or expand dam extents to make them appear as new or different schemes. Priority will be given, of course, to selected dams that provide downstream irrigation services to the schemes, which will be being identified under the component 2, which is on irrigation modernization. And to some of the dams we'll identify as high risk from the ongoing risk screening exercise we're doing. I think Engineer Ogumakiwa and Engineer Marvin will give us more details into that exercise. Then the safety of dams is key to climate adaptation by ensuring water delivery for water supply, hydropower, ecosystem conservation, and irrigation to mitigate droughts, protecting against dam break, flooding, and storing excess water to mitigate floods following high precipitation. So some of the activities and objectives of this component will be to conduct a dam safety portfolio risk assessment exercise, including establishing and implementing a risk indexing screening method for dams in Nigeria and selecting dams for rehabilitation works. This has been in earnest for some time now, and I believe over 20 dams have been screened so far, and it's ongoing. Our intention is to get to 100 at least. Then prepare an emergency action plan and an operation and maintenance manual, including operational protocols, dam health monitoring and reporting protocols, and an instrumentation plan for dam safety. The EAP will include safety protocols that will address safety concerns specific to women and persons with disability. And also to perform rehabilitation works, including measures for seepage reduction, hydrological, including measures for seepage reduction, hydrological and structural safety measures, strengthening of main dam body and foundation, and improvement of basic dam facilities and dam safety instruments. And then to prepare and implement sediment management plans through bathymetric surveys and feasibility studies, piloting of institutional models, and plans for treatment of upstream drainage catchments with construction of sediment retaining check dams and riverbank protection structures. And also to apply nature-based solutions to dam reservoir operations and management, such as the use of natural floodplains for flood risk reduction and improved sedimentation management practices through improved operation and mitigation of adverse land use practices within the catchment. Okay, this is just a note to say additional details on how we intend to do this are in the project appraisal document and the annex of technical notes on dam safety. So for the current status of the SPIN implementation plan, currently the loan has been signed by the IDA World Bank. The loan agreement has been signed by the Honorable Minister of Finance. The Federal Project Management Unit has been established, which contains the technical units on power, dams, and irrigation. The Project Steering Committee has been inaugurated, and the Federal Technical Committee as well. We are currently on the process of engaging a dam safety review panel of experts that we will keep with supervising the implementation of the component on dams throughout the project life. The selected state governments that have met the required criteria are being engaged, and a formal implementation launch of the SPIN project it will be in next month, just as the trimming project will be rounding up on the 30th of June. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Amina. And I want to appreciate the audience for giving her such rapt attention. That means we know we are here for serious business. And I would like to appreciate those joining us via Zoom. And I hope that they had an educative paper presentation from Engineer Amina. At this point, I would like to call on the next paper presenter, who is presenting a paper on dam safety portfolio screening, Introduction to Rising 2 for Nigeria, Dr. Marvin Paul Agwoku. Thank you very much.
I want to maintain the already established protocol. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. I am Engineer Dr. Paul Marvin, and I have the privilege of making this presentation on behalf of those who participated in the screening of dams exercise. So the stage has already been established from the lead paper presenter, and we already have a clue of where we are going to, the SPIN projects. So what am I supposed to be discussing here? I will be presenting the dam safety portfolio risks screening and doing an introduction to the Rising 2. So I have presented an outline of the presentation, so we'll just do a brief introduction, then dive into the concept of risk assessment, and go into risk indexing, and we'll now have an overview of the Rising 2. Then we'll give you a progress on the screening of dams in Nigeria, then a brief conclusory remarks. So in November 2024, the workshop on dam safety risk screening, risk indexing was conducted with resource persons from the Canadian Dam Association, So Andy and Rick were very prominent in discharging the workshop. The workshop. Yeah, the main outcome, the outcome of the workshop was actually the RICS Index tool, the RICS Index tool. And having heard about the dam safety management, the main issue about dam safety management is risk. And for us all, we must have had something to do with risks. Perhaps we must have indulged in carrying out some risks. And we could also have an understanding of what risk is all about. So what is risk? Risk generally is defined as the possibility of something bad happening. Perhaps that is the general concept. And it could be that it's either you are doing something or you are not doing something. Or perhaps you are doing things out of context. So, but for experts, risk is just more than just a say. It has to be measured and it has to be assessed. So, the common method of assessment is usually through probabilistic method that is known to us. So, in most contexts, the measurements are looked at as a function of the probability and severity. So if you have to do something, there must be a consequence. And if there is a consequence, the severity has to be measured. So it is a function of the probability and severity of an adverse event that can impact on life, health, property, or the environment. So in this case, we are talking about the consequence of whatever we do. So now the concept of risk assessment. I've discussed the probability. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to have taken this presentation with Engineer Dixon. Okay. So thank you very much. I think I need to bring the mic closer because of the online participant. Thank you. So the concept of risk assessment, like I said, has to do with measurements. And risk assessment in dam safety provides characterization of probability of adverse consequence to people, property, and the environment resulting from dams failure. Like I mentioned earlier, we'll always be referring to the consequence of the things we do, and they can either be measured in the way we know by either, of course, the probabilistic way. So when we are talking about function, then a function of what? So certainly some parameters have to be clearly defined. And here, we now look at risks as a function of probability and, of course, consequence. So now we are talking about the measurements and how you can express it. So it has to do with the probability, which has to do with consequence and the severity. That is the measurement. So this commonly can be presented in a graphical form like what you are seeing here. These are hypothetical values that will express the probability of an event or whatever you have done, and in relation to the severity of whatever you have done. So in this context, risk is measured as a probability. And the other method is by analytical method, which are usually based on rigorous calculation. And of course, even the graphical method will usually comes from the analytical method and expressed in graphical form. So, but since new approach has been presented, and this is the risk indexing that we are talking about today. And it has been mainly presented on the project of the World Bank, especially during their intervention in India and Brazil. And we will be able to have more details of what risk indexing is all about. If we go into their website, we'll be able to download this document on portfolio risk assessment using the risk index method. So the purpose of risk indexing is to develop the risk profile of the entire portfolio of dams. Perhaps when they are making interventions, there will be series of dams in a portfolio. Like you have Dadinkowa Dam, Gurara Dam, Chalawa Dam, Tiga Dam, and a list of so many. You can't just, within a framework of funding, you can't just say you are going to rehabilitate all of that. You have to provide a very justifiable method that is scientifically proven to make this assessment and then take decisions. So precisely, the risk indexing is all about profiling a portfolio of dam and carrying out decision on which dam is to be, which dams will require intervention. So the risk profile will therefore provide information about the relative risks that each dam poses to people, property, and the environment. So it will also provide sound basis for quick priority of urgency and the amount of attention that the portfolio members should receive. So it is all about decision making. So by the time you have the list of all that, all the dams, and you have done the risk indexing, so you will be able to now do a profile that looks like this. So assuming Dadinkowa is dam 1, and then Gurara Dam is 2, so you have that 1, 2, 3 in that order. So you find out that the risk index is the one reflecting on the vertical column. And then the higher the risk, of course, the higher the index. So now the risk indexing tool. So just a brief background on the risk index. What is risk index? It has to do with a function of fragility index and potential impact. So you can see how it is expressed as a function. So risk is always a function. So unlike what you have in the probabilistic method of measurement, where you have to do a ratio or provide them in percentage, in this case, you are going to now determine all the parameters as indices. So for the fragility index, it is expressed as a summation of the existing condition, the technical characteristic, and the safety plan. So there are three key aspects that you have to sum up, which is the existing characteristic, that is EC, the technical characteristic, and the safety plan. So these parameters are clearly defined there. So at the end, these are the composition of all the parameters in each of those indices. For technical characteristics, you have issues of aging of the dam. So you can now see that, as the lead presenter has noted, that over time, whatever you do and whatever you not do may affect your dam. And this has to do with when a dam is constructed over time. So the issue of age. So an indices has to be provided on whatever you have been doing on the dam. So you also have issues of design, which he also noted. So you have inflow, design flood, and of course the hydrology. So you also have other parameters that has to do with the location, the seismic activities, then of course the landforms and the stability of the land. You also have issues of the length of dams, then the appurtenance structures like the conduits, the spillway, and all of that, including filters and the foundation and abutments at each ends. So for the existing condition, of course, when you visit dams, the status of the dams have to be reported, and it could be a positive one or a negative one. So it could be issues of seismic resistance. It could also be issue of availability of flood design capacity data. Of course, the discharge, of course, the issue of the flow discharge, then the backup plans and backup powers, and all issues that has to do with the existing conditions. So physical condition of the dams during site visits is very crucial. So we also have issues of safety plans. So when we talk about design, when the lead paper presenter was talking about design, these are areas that the RICS Index tool will be dealing with on design and construction. So the issue of documentation of design is very critical, keeping records of our designs and ensuring that they form the basis for our operation and maintenance. So we also have the issue of operation and maintenance manual, the issue of emergency plan, and of course, even the staffing in the dam, because you cannot just construct a dam and leave it there. It has to be operated. Maintenance has to be done, and even emergency intervention has to be in place. So these things have to be managed by some key personnel. So we also have issues of when you do inspection, you also have to report from time to time. These also have to be documented, and they have to be available to experts from time to time. So, of course, we also have issues of follow-up action during emergency and all that. Yeah, still on the index, RICS indexing. So the probability now, how do you index? The issue now is how do you do this indexing? So unlike the probabilistic method, in this case, you have to provide a scale. It's either you are providing a weight or you are providing a score. And this score has to be scientifically justified. So for the fragility index, the probability in this case will now be replaced by the weights. While for the potential impact, these ones will now be replaced by the scores. So here, RICS indexing is once again expressed as a function of the fragility index and the potential impact. So for each of them, like I earlier mentioned, the fragility index will be weighted while the potential impact will be scored. So at the end, an Excel sheet was produced. So the Excel sheet has all these parameters aggregated into it. So you have various parameters. This is the case of the technical characteristic, a reflection of the land form and the stability of the land. So you have different information that have been populated in this tool, which will guide you to perform scores. So the scores have already been defined there, and all you need to do is to fill in the scores in the red portions that have been highlighted in this sheet. So the aggregated score will now be provided. The aggregated weight will now be provided under. So in the tool, you also have the input section and you also have the output section. So this is a key reflection of what you see in the output section. So at the end, this information for technical characteristic, existing condition, the safety plan, and of course the potential impact are aggregated and then presented either as a percentage or as the index, as the case may be. So the sheet will also provide you, the spreadsheet will also provide you the summary of all the parameters that you have created. So you can see here for the technical characteristic, you have the various scores and the percentages that have been scored for each of the parameters that are associated with technical characteristic. Similarly, with the existing conditions, you have the scores and, of course, the percentages expressed and summarized as related to all the parameters that has to do with the existing conditions. So how did we come about these scores and this weight? I know this question will be in your mind. Yeah, before the workshop that was held in November, experts were actually given some of these parameters to assess. And then based on their judgment, they had submitted various scores. And before then, there were also some analyses that were presented that were made based on an analytical hierarchical process. But because of the time constraint, we won't be delving into it. So the information obtained from analytical process were eventually validated by some of the scores that were presented by the experts. And of course, based on Professor Sati, the author of the analytical hydrological hierarchical process, he proposed that we should be consistent about the order of magnitude, that is 10 times more than we are inconsistent, and that therefore an inconsistency ratio of about 10% or less is reasonable. So between the scores made by the expert and the scores provided by the analytical hierarchical process, tolerance of 10% difference was made. So this is a presentation of one of the parameters. Okay, that is the technical characteristic, and what was done, provided by the AHP, and what the experts have provided. So you can see that if you juxtapose these two together, they are within the same, within the tolerance of 10%. So just a quick summary. The risk index tool has been provided as a spreadsheet, and it can be accessed either in Microsoft Excel or in other formats that can be adopted by the spreadsheet, by spreadsheet on your personal computer. So we also have user manual that we can share to participants that will guide participants on how to fill in the tools. So the next session is the progress of risk screening of dams in Nigeria. During the workshop in November, 21 dams were successfully screened at the workshop. So the risk assessment and screening of the 21 dams were successfully completed during the workshop for the development of risk screening of tools in Nigeria. And based on the risk screening, you can see the risk index profile expressed. And it is easier for you to make a categorization of the risks. So if you like, you can say the highest risks are highlighted in the ones within the red shaded area. Then the medium to moderate could be those ones highlighted in pink and yellow. And of course, those ones with lesser risks are the ones in green. So you can see the list of the 21 dams that have been assessed. And then currently, we have more dams, the screening of the risk screening of more dams ongoing. Like it has earlier been noted by the presentation on the SPIN project, 100 dams have been targeted in Nigeria for the risk screening within the dam portfolio. So in order to achieve that, a quality control and quality assurance team has been established, and currently they are working to ensure that the screening of 42 dams are completed by the end of this month. So what are the challenges? We all know that data availability is a problem. And these are peculiar, this is a peculiar challenge from all those who have been carrying out the assessment of the risks of dams in Nigeria. And it is a major requirement. Data are major requirement for the rising tool. And without data, the quality of assessment can be greatly impacted. During the risk screening, we also have more information that could not be accessed from the river basin, and those information are largely associated with the technical characteristics and issues of even field visits to assess the existing condition, and then the safety plan, also documents that are associated with the safety plan are not available. Like it was earlier noted, even issues of emergency response plan and preparedness are not available to ensure that population at risk are adequately safeguarded in the event of any emergency. So what is the way forward? For me, this is a workshop, and it offers us the opportunity for us to discuss the way forward, how we can ensure that data are preserved, and how we can ensure that the risk screening and the raising tool is updated to meet future requirements, and ensure that we have proper documentations in our institutions. So just a final note, the raising tool offers a modern and a simplified means for safety risk screening of a set of dams in a portfolio. The tool has been successfully utilized for the screening of risk index of 21 dams, and we still have more dam screening ongoing. Well, in itself, it is not a means to an end. On this note, let me end with these quotes on the portfolio risk assessment using the document, on this document. The note is this: although the information obtained with the help of the risk index can be extremely useful for preliminary screening or ranking of riskier dams, especially for large portfolio of dams, it is recommended that those identified higher risk dams should be subject to further detailed risk assessment using PFMA or other qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. This will inform decision making on priority remedial works at the next stage. So it is just a way to pass across to us that as much as decisions are made, there will also be need for further technical analysis. The PFMA has to do with financial management analysis. Then the quantitative and qualitative has to do with, of course, the technical aspects that will ensure that these dams are actually suitable for intervention. At this juncture, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you once again. Okay, Silara, yeah.
Thank you, Engineer Dr. Marvin Paul, for your meticulous presentation. And I would like to recognize our participants online for still keeping in tune with us. You have been very keen, paying attention, and we appreciate you. And I would like to appreciate the participants sitting here for paying keen attention and being mindful of the whole presentation. We appreciate you. At this point, I would like to call on the Acting Director General of National Water Resource Institute, Dr. Martins Edovie, to give a presentation on Code of Practice for Dams and Reservoir Operations. Thank you very much.
Forward. What of the line? No problem.
It's good?
Should be. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will be taking you around the code. I'm sure some of you must have seen the code for dam reservoir operation in Nigeria. This actually, it was a long journey. We started almost 2016, 17, and I think before we had the final approval. So thank you very much. I will try as much as possible to be brief as much as possible. This is going to be the content in line with what has been put in the code. But you quite agree with me when you have about 100 pages, and for me to summarize in probably 40 minutes, we'll try everything humanly possible. Now, let us look at the forward itself, because the Nigerian Code of Practice, which you have the number red written, where it talks about the dam reservoir operation in Nigeria, was actually prepared by a technical committee made up of almost all the stakeholders in Nigeria. And this code is quite applicable to issues of development, operational procedures, specification for personnel, and of course equipment to ensure safety. and of course the management of most of the dams that we have. In preparing this code of practice, references were actually made both internationally and nationally. I think we looked at all the code that's in existence in most countries. We looked at what we have in Nigeria before we came to the final conclusion of this. You quite also agree with me that as a form of introduction, dams are normally built to control or to store water flow. I mean, basically, but we're going to go into some of the classification as we move along. But have occasionally failed and, of course, uncontrollable released water sometimes leads to various serious consequences in terms of damaging infrastructure, lives, properties, and what have you. And this is what we want to avoid. It has also become very necessary for us to look at the various guidelines, what we have, and what are the standard procedures as regards minimizing the risk impact of most of what we have. When I was giving the goodwill message, I did mention that the dam department, which represented the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, is actually the EFCC. People don't look at it from the technical aspect, what they are supposed to be doing, and to ensure that the lives of everybody is safe for all of us to actually be in this country. So it is actually intended for safety purposes, which is in line with what we are here for. Now, let me also make mention that the code itself does not really limit it in terms of the various water supply that we have, flood control, recreational, no. But how are you going to operate most of this to ensure that there is safety in terms of whatever we are doing? I use this to kind of relate what we have at the moment and some of the things I'll be mentioning. Those of you who are quite familiar with Goroyo Dam is what you have in there. Now, the cross-section that you have there, in terms of the various clay layers as part of the embankment that you have in there, and of course, the various lithological units within the dam, and how do you monitor? Now, the small test tube you have at the right hand of it, we noticed that after the dam construction, actually it was completed in 1983, we noticed that most of the monitoring system that you have there were completely blocked. And for you to have safety, there's a need to have most of these very important aspects in terms of the monitoring. So, for the benefit of everybody, and also for just refreshment, to refresh your memory, we just try to look at what is even a dam. And of course, it's strictly just artificial barrier. It's constructed, it could be across to ensure that water is trapped. And of course, to expand this water for storage and for different aim and of course objectives, like water supply, for example. It could be irrigation, recreation, and hydropower, and flood control. This is just for what I call just a refreshing kind of. Now, sometimes in the code, you'll be seeing differences between reservoir, dam, and sometimes there's always this confusion. We'll be using it interchangeably because when you talk about the structure, you talk about the water that's impounded within that particular structure, excluding the groundwater reserve, because when we talk of groundwater storage, we also refer to them as reservoir. But in this sense, we are not referring to groundwater input very strictly. So let us take note of that. Now, very importantly, if we're talking of failure, we're talking of safety, there's a need. I think the first presenter in the morning did mention quite a lot on some of those definitions. Now, for the Goroyon project, our aim was to do this installation to ensure that the issue of monitoring is actually enshrined or reactivated within the dam, and also to ensure that the safety is maintained. And when we want to talk about failure, we're referring to the catastrophic characterization of sudden release of the water. And when you have this kind of course, it goes with quite a lot of damages, either to properties, materials, especially when the course of passage is blocked by development and, of course, a lot of structures, what has actually happened in most of the areas that we have today. So why the safety aspect is the act of ensuring that the integrity and, of course, the viability of the dam is maintained, and, of course, to as much as possible is not a risk to the properties, to life, and, of course, to the general environment. Let us take this in a context, and based on this, that is why the code is very, very important, that there's a need for us to have a procedure so that when you are talking of safety, you are talking of failure, the bottom line is we want to protect life and properties. So, why the need for the code? Having given the introduction, we felt that the code should provide the guidelines and, of course, the minimum standard in terms of the dam, the reservoir, as regard to safety and, of course, covering aspects like what has been mentioned in terms of inspection, monitoring, operation, and, of course, maintenance. It also emphasized the proactive emergency planning geared towards ensuring that the vulnerable community that are downstream, of course, are informed at the appropriate time to ensure that nobody suffers undue losses. It also outlined the minimal requirements that are supposed to follow in terms of national application. The code identified the potential risks associated with such reservoir operation, like flooding, for example, structural failures, and environmental impacts. These are very, very critical when you're talking of such a code. There's a need for public awareness, for example, need for education to ensure that everybody is carried along. Because take the example in the month that was illustrated by, I think, Engineer Labi. He did mention that the villagers, the community that you have in there, they noticed an unusual kind of movement within the dam area, and they had to report. Not just quite some few hours, of course, everything gave up. So that is why you need a constant reminder, the education, and, of course, the public awareness to ensure that most of these are taken into consideration. I did mention, therefore, that I will be referring to a very practical example, the Koroyo Dam, and try as much as possible to synthesize some of the things that you need to do as to what is very essential in protecting and, of course, looking at the code. The first is the various characteristics that with dam, as I did mention. It's a large capacity dam. In a while, I'm going to tell you the various criteria. Most of you are engineers here, so but at least just to give you a reminder. And of course, what type of hydrological zone? We have almost about 8 hydrological zones in Nigeria, and where does this one belong? The river that it's talking about. So it gives you the characteristics of that particular dam. And for the kind of project for the monitoring was to ensure that most of the structure for monitoring are in place so that people do not unnecessarily put a code into what I call unnecessarily, assumption without monitoring in terms of even the water levels. Next, you have to look at the lithological formation that we have in the dam in Goroyo, for example. Now, for about 0 to about 15 meters, a kind of embankment that was done, and these are mainly different composition before you came to the first, what we call the clay blanket. From the clay blanket, of course, to the second one, there's a kind of intercalation of a lot of sandy material within those areas. And of course, you don't have other one being done before you came to the last aspect, which is the second blanket. Now, this is very important because if you have to monitor, for you to assess and do your portion as a dam owner, as the site engineer, there's a need to have a mental calculation of what you are doing. And this is where monitoring is very important in terms of whatever structures you want to put in there for you to be able to do that. Sometimes when we just talk of monitoring, people look at it as something you just look at it and move. Even for you to install a piezometer, for example, takes quite a long issue. You have to do a lot of drilling. So the one that has been vandalized, it took us quite a long time for have almost about 43 of these piezometers drilled. And of course, you have to, first of all, ensure that appropriately is logged for you to be able to know what formation and how you are going to do your final installation. Most of the time for the layman, a borehole is just kind of a structure that can be drilled either by hand or by well for you to extract the water. But technically, we are looking at a hydraulic structure that when you properly design and construct it, will permit the economic withdrawal of water. So what it means that for you to be able to monitor, they have to be that condition that are quite necessary. And these are very important, especially for monitoring in terms of safety that we are talking about. You have this. These are some of the ones, especially at the top of the crest. In here, you have quite a lot of, from the various stratigraphical columns that you have in the main crest. These piezometers are structured in such a way that you can monitor so that any kind of deviation from what you have there, you're able to report exactly that there's some crisis. And that is the whole idea of monitoring. Dam inspectors, especially in advanced countries, they are well paid. I don't see why, for example, you can't make quite a lot of money just being a dam inspector. If we have over 400, 450 dams in Nigeria, we don't even have the personnel to ensure that these are adequately monitored for you to have that extensive, that on-the-spot assessment and good documentation in terms of data collection. And we have to revert this. We also look at the various aspects that it takes. Now, when you just have a piezometer, people look at it with what does it take? So as an engineer who is supposed to be supervising, supposed to be ensuring that these are done at the appropriate, there's a need for you to understand what are the things that are put in place for you to have those data that we're talking about. So this is just a small illustration where you have a lot of the drilling is taking place. And of course, these are special piezometers that have been formed through the manufacturer, because you have to give them specification or what type of piezometer that you have. And of course, you have to come out with the various design to arrive at this, so that anytime you are measuring, you know that you are measuring based on facts. And these are quite critical for all of us. At the end of the day, you have this kind of structures where you can just open most of all this in and you take your measurement and you document. So you could imagine taking a series of this data for months, for years and years and years, and you effectively and religiously monitor it. Then you can be able to see how safe those kind of, dams that you're actually looking at. So it's very crucial that we take a look at all this. At the end of the day, you are going to have series of data from that monitoring that will help you to interpret the safety in terms of the management, in terms of whatever that could come in terms of collapsing of most of what you have in that dam that will bring risks to the structures. So what is going to happen now in terms of responsibility? There's a need for us to know what are the responsibilities of the dam owners, the reservoir owners. What it means is that they are supposed to obtain a permit for the construction and the safe operation of the dam. It's like you cannot just drive without a driver's license. And what it means that I want to employ, especially all the various management of dam departments are here. You should take it as a project, go around all the dams, request for the certificates of most of those dams. Where did you obtain the permission to be able for you to construct a dam? And this must be put in place so that we can have a well-structured, a well-orderly society where people don't do things without the laws. They have to be a well-registered professional, like a water resources engineer, civil engineer, that is going to man and operate this in terms of the maintenance. You don't just see anybody mounting into the aircraft and say it's a pilot. No. You are supposed to ensure that most of those professionals are licensed by terms of registration and are qualified to be inspectors of most of those, codes that are supposed to be prepared aligned with what is in the code. Shall use the guideline provided in the code to produce documents that are mandatory to guide safe operation. So, if you go to the dam and there are no piezometer for you to measure, for example, you cannot operate that dam because most of the safety conditions are not there. So this must be taken into consideration so that the code must be operated as very effective, and of course that it complies with everything. It shall also comply with the orders arising for the findings of the regulator to ensure the safety of the dam reservoir and its structures. The owners and the operators must remain fully accountable for all the duties and obligations associated with the ownership and the operation. It is very easy. You have some money. Yes, you have a farm. For you to say, okay, you want to have a dam. Now, who is going to operate that dam? Who is going to ensure that all the monitoring characteristics are put in place? This is the function of the dams department, that you must ensure that they are registered, they are monitored, and they have the personnel to ensure that the code for this particular work is actually put in place. So, what are you supposed to do? We still also have even the dam reservoir planning. There is no way you can even start in terms of the design or the thinking of the conception of having a dam. There have to be pre-construction planning as identified in the morning to identify the very potential sites. It is not everywhere you can put a dam, as really pointed out by my friend in the morning. These must be taken into consideration, and these are the permits, criteria that must be given. Even if you are the head of state and he says go and put a dam there, as professionals, you have the right to politely tell him that this place is not conducive for a dam. Why should you be wasting money when it is not conducive? Now, when people, for any reason, the dam decide to fail, who are the people who are going to be responsible for this? I think we must come back to our senses and we must do the right thing at the appropriate time. We must define possible project configuration. We must establish the type of project that are quite necessary for the best site to be cited based on the article technical consideration. In addition to the preliminary planning stage for the dam, the following must also be taken into consideration. The formulation of the project purposes, the timing, for example, so that you can be able to get the necessary permits that are required for this. NESDRA is supposed to be affected because they deal with the chemical and the water quality aspect. The environmental permit for the Ministry of Environment must be obtained. In a situation where people, because they are rich and they can just give directive without, I think it's unacceptable. We must follow the guidelines. We must identify exactly the potential of the dam. We must develop the construction plan, prepare in terms of construction, and the post-construction plan, whether it requires decommissioning at a particular stage, all that must be taken into consideration. We must also look at the various stages that are quite important. For example, it involves quite a recognizance at the first stage. These need to be gathered in terms of information that are quite essential. We must have a conceptual that are based on facts and not on orders from above. We must complete the selection of most of the desired project sites for the final design. And when it comes to the final design, the right things must be done. At this stage, you must constitute the investigation team made of engineers, hydrologists, hydrogeologists, to ensure that the appropriate thing is done. The stage 2 shall include, for example, the technical investigation. This entails the geological, because whatever we are putting on the soil has to do with the geology. You must ensure that the geotechnical aspect is put in there to corroborate whatever the hydrogeologist, the geologist, and the geophysicist has actually obtained. For example, you are carrying out the geophysical to determine what type of formation, not just only the formation, what is the content of the clays that we are having. There's a particular method of doing this. If, for example, you have the crest, There are positions you must ensure that the central electrode is adequately positioned to be able to know exactly what type of clay formation, at what depth, how long it is, how extensive, and also what is the plasticity of that particular clay formation. This must be followed extensively in terms of the hydrogeology, in terms of other factors that are quite necessary in terms of choosing the right site for that particular dam. That is the crest, the offset, and try as much as possible to have a very, very synchronized aspect in terms of what you have in the lithology of most of those places. This stage 2 continues with determination of the zero sizes in the spillway, for example, developing an appropriate runoff model for the catchment. So you are not only looking at the site, but you are looking at the catchment, because just the example we had in Aloe Dam, if they had looked at the catchment and said that there's a possibility of having a lot of rainfall coming from the other side, perhaps some of this catastrophic issue would have been avoided at the first time. So we must do the right thing. We must calibrate most of the runoff models, and of course look at the historical flood data where possible and assess any operating limitations and criteria that are likely to affect such spillway. We must also look at the various consequences of potential failures in advance, and of course try as much as possible to put the right things in the right places in terms of what are you going to lose in terms of the remote floods, for example, the water supply losses, the operational problem. Sometimes it could be accidental, and all this must be put in place. Sometimes you put a gate valve from the construction of a dam, and for 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, nobody has even touched the valve to see whether it is even possible to have a loose of it. Then it becomes useless. Now, at the time you have an emergency, what happens? You cannot even open the valve. And at this stage, it is too late to cry. So we must do the right thing at the appropriate time to ensure that most of these things are quite avoided. We must also look at the various design requirements in total, right from the structure that is supposed to be the suit and of course the load that is supposed to be carrying. We must look at all the seismic load, for example, the various flooding load and the normal operating that is allowed in terms of your own safety, in terms of the safety of the people downstream, just in case such things should happen. Now, most of those dam design data should be based on sound investigation, leading to detailed understanding of what you have in terms of the geology, in terms of the geotechnical, in terms of the hydrological data that you have gotten from most of those areas. The construction material is also very important, because in a situation where you have quite a lot of clays that are within the site, there's a need for you to remove most of those clay and replace them with the appropriate material that will have a very good embankment. These are very critical, and we must ensure that these are done. We must also look at the other aspect, finding suitable exploration in terms of the testing for the boring you are going to be using, for example, the fit test, laboratory test, and all the samples must be preserved for rechecking and rechecking to ensure that most of what we are having are not just based on just intuition, but based on facts. The description of the local geology is quite important in terms of the hydrological design analysis, and a report must be submitted as at when due. Inflow sources for the dam reservoir must be looked at, the magnitude and the temporal distribution of the design storm, and of course, many of the controls, including topographical delineation, must be adhered to. We must also look at other aspects in terms of the various classification. Sometimes people don't even know the difference between a small dam, a medium dam, and a high, a very, very high-class dams. So these are not due to most of you who are, practitioners, but for the people and for reminders. For the high-capacity dam, for example, you must ensure that you have a capacity of even 61,000 plus in terms of you with a height of greater than 15. And if you look at most of those very high dams, that is the criteria. The medium one is actually less than the 1,233, and of course, the height of between 8 to about 15 meters, while the smaller ones are less than that. These are all criteria that you must put in place. In terms of the hazard issue, for example, how many losses in terms of human are we having? These are the anticipated and what we call in the classification of the losses, for example. Nothing could be more than life. Then you look at the property, the significant damages, look at those that are low, and of course, other that are mainly just due to very, very small issues. So these are just the pictorial views of what you have in the dam. The first one is the very small one, medium, and of course the large dam. These are all issues that must be taken into consideration as inspectors. We must also look at, in terms of the flow, which of them are flowing, which of them are not flowing in terms of that. These are things that you should put at the back of your mind. So when you are looking at the various criteria and the data form that you are going to be using, should always be ringing bells in whatever you are doing. So the others are the design requirements. This might be very more important to the designer engineer, who the structural engineer, looking at the various dam failure analysis and report the constraint, for example, and the sequence in terms of the magnitude of the break, and how you can be able to look at the downstream and, of course, the hazard classification as already put in there. We look at the design step, the stability analysis based on the various rock and the earth conventional dams that we have. We just put everything is contained in here. And these are the things you must ensure, and not just inspecting. And of course, I'm going to take a leaf very soon on how you can look at this with maps and, of course, the various forms that are quite essential for you to be able to do this. Next, we also look at the various operational requirements. The dam's reservoir requirements in terms of the hydraulical safety within that. So they have to build a standard operating procedures. It's like you come in the morning, you want to look at your car. First of all, open the inside of the car, open the bonnet, look whether the engine oil has gone down or is stable, look at the water. These are procedural. You can't just jump into your car and say, okay, you are starting because you don't think that. And when something happens, because you never follow the procedures, and we must extend this to dams. Dam reservoir operation requires for structural safety, which looks like the various working and off that are especially the equipment that have been installed. Are they functional, for example? This must be done. The maintenance schedule. Have they been following the maintenance schedule? You are supposed to look at every 3 months. Have you even looked at the siltation, for example, agitating what you have in there, and to ensure you flush out most of this silt before it becomes a little bit quite silted as a dam. Equipment data sheet must be provided. The manufacturer manual, and even the dam manual is supposed to be there so that people can follow what we are. We know very well that we're always in a hurry. We do not want to follow procedures. We do not want to even obey very simple instruction. At the end of the day, it's being penny wise, pound foolish. I think we must do the right thing. And that is what we are talking in terms of dam safety and what? And this management. The professional dams engineer must be experienced. Experience not in terms of wasteful years, but in terms of doing what is right. How can we have 400 and something dams and somebody is employed? Nobody has taken the time to say, okay, these people are assigned to this dam to check. We must reverse this so that our younger engineer could learn until they become experienced. The hydrogeologist, geologist must ensure that the piezometer that has been constructed, he monitors the water level. Once in a day, twice in a week, depending on the structure and the geological and, of course, the hydrical parameter that you have in there. We must look at other criteria, for example, what is the quality of the water? You have quite a lot of algae, for example. Where are the algae coming from? All these are quite important for all of us to check and ensure that all those things are well maintained. The dam surveillance must ensure that all the requirements are done. Reporting analysis, the data, the vegetation, for example. You go to some dams, you have all manners of shrub springing out with a lot of tap roots, extending into the dam, and nobody feels as if something is wrong. The moment you leave it, what happens? Of course, it's going to create a lot of structures, a lot of fractures within those embankments. And the moment you have that, what happens to the seepage? It becomes quite easy. And these are the simple procedure that must be followed. If there's a need for grasses to prevent erosion, the grasses must be there. For one reason or the other, the grasses are not working well, you must ensure that new ones are planted. And these are the simple procedure that we must follow. Routine visual inspection, for example, must be looked at. The personnel, how qualified are they? How honest are they? Are they the type who will sit down in a hotel and be instructing the people who are just there, what is the welfare level now? Of course, your education is wasted. If, for example, during the dry season, you expected the same result and during the rainy season. These are things that you must ensure that are quiet. You must review and evaluate the instrumentation that is put in there. Are you getting the right instrumentation? Are the batteries working? Is it transmitting from the dam to your office, wherever it's located? These are all issues that you must look at in terms of surveillance. All detailed inspection reports must be put. Do not store things on your head, because the head has a lot of trouble. You are thinking of school fees, you are thinking of your wife, you are thinking of your husband. Why would you want to add that to the data you are collecting at the site? These are simple things, but they are very important in terms of what you have. The regulator must review any detailed inspection reports, as at when you look at abnormalities and ensure that it's well taken into consideration. The owners must revise the inspection report to ensure that regulators' comments and, of course, whatever is submitted within 1 month or 2 months are addressed. The time frame may be adjusted in between the regulator depending on what is the purpose for that particular dam. Flood emergencies, for example, must be done in collaboration with the communities. What stops you, for example, training teachers, headmasters, to be able to look at something? In those days, we used to have what we call the science club, who will come and monitor, do we have rain today? Do we have rain day before yesterday? And it's recorded. These are all things that we must return to if we really want to we are serious about what we're supposed to be doing. In case of concrete, whatever it is, we must look at the drainage system, look at the leaks and cracks within those dams. We must look at the spillway, must balance operation, and the permitted that are carried out within most of those dams, except there are other cases that you don't have control over, and this must be looked at. Any debris or rock movement within those areas must be investigated. What is responsible for the movement? Do you have some issues of seismic, for example? Do you have some issue of losing of the soil, pressure release from the surface? These are all things. Emergency lighting systems shall be properly maintained to ensure that everything is clearly seen. Now, for the issue of earth or concrete work, for example, you must look at the suitability in terms of the material, the rock that are filled, the gravel. And what it means is that whatever materials you have, if you have a typical granite that has been eroded and is weathered, you cannot compare the strength of that one to the one that is quite fresh. These are all issues that we must look at. Safety water level measurements must be implemented. Embankment must be maintained and inspected by those who are supposed to do the inspection. The drainage system are thoroughly cleared, and of course, and ensure that people do not throw rubbish into most of the dams. So these are all issues that we must look at. The emergency operation is also very critical. Dam reservoir owners, for example, must identify emergency conditions which could endanger the integrity of the dam reservoir and that may require immediate action. We must describe the procedure and show most of those dam reservoir, the owners, and the personnel that are employed to ensure that the correct thing is done. We must provide timely warning to the appropriate emergency management agencies for the implementation of those emergencies. We have various emergencies, NEMA, for example, SEMA, for example. It is not only when there is problem that you're looking for blanket, looking for bread, looking for, no. You have to walk hand in hand. Even sometimes when you are taking reading, take them along to where you are going so that when there's emergency, they are all involved in it. And the code must also be given to them for them to do their work effectively. We must provide and indicate exactly what are the emergency action plans that are quite important This must be documented. This must be documented in terms of the procedural, who is supposed to do it, at what time, and who is supposed to report to. They have to be a command chain. And these are very, very issues that we must look at if we must make progress. So, if the dam is working well, no problem. But the time will come that the dam is not working well. And that, what it means that we need to decommission. And decommissioning is a profession of itself. You need an expert to decommission a dam. But there are quite a lot of experienced dam inspectors who have the ability, they know exactly what they are supposed to do. So when it is time for decommissioning a reservoir, the owner shall prepare a dam safety decommission plan, which outlines the proposed action to be taken for decommissioning of such reservoirs. The extent of modification required for the safety decommissioning of a dam reservoir shall be assessed by an experienced engineer, and this must include, for example, effective removal of part of the main wall. You don't just come there and remove everything with a bulldozer. No, it has to be systematic. And these are what the code is saying, that you must do things in a systematic way. Permanent enlargement or openings of the outlet must be done. Lowering of the spillway creases, for example, the removal of the spillway, the control valve, and the stopboard must be done according to laid down procedures. We must evacuate the diversion of channels through whatever means so that you do not affect and cause other problems that are likely to come up. So this must be done, and you must ensure that it is done correctly. The dam safety decommissioning plan shall also include a time sequence of studies and work associated with this commissioning. It is unprofessional, for example, if an oil well is not working. I know quite a lot of people in Aberdeen, because most of the, if you, UK, that is the northern part of Scotland, most of the decommissioning or most of the wells that have been producing for quite some time, they need to be decommissioned. And experts have come from all the way from Nigeria to Aberdeen and to the offshore to decommission wells. The same for dams. We must decommission in line with the technical specification for decommissioning. What it means is that the impact of sudden loss of remaining embankment on a dam could be very grievous. So we must ensure that flood events in compliance with the guideline for failure impact assessment of the dam must be complied with. Provision for safe release of water stored, provision to minimize the impact on downstream, provision for consultation with downstream residents and landlords and landholders. And of course, in addition to all the safety issue in terms of the environment, the economic, social, cultural, that must be considered holistically in the decommissioning of dams. These are quite important, and we must follow what we are supposed to do. The legal requirements. In Nigeria here, we do not follow, this one is doing it, therefore you must do it. No. For dam reservoir operation in Nigeria, the following requirement shall apply. All dam reservoirs shall be registered with the regulator responsible for dam regulations. Permit shall be obtained for construction, operation, safety of dam, and decommissioning. Completion certificate shall be obtained for registered engineers, the competent work related to dam reservoir maintenance, repairs, removals, and all this must be looked at holistically. And for example, we have some money that was put in. As at the time we did this, the exchange rate was quite different. And we do not want to just use dollars and look as if we are slaves to the dollars. The dams department, we must be ready for every 5 to 10 years to reverse and update this particular code. Now, for example, for the small dam, initially we said between 200 and 2 million for registration of those permits. And listen, for every dam owners, they must pay what we call safety costs every year. Because if there is a problem, you who is in Abuja here, for example, you want to go to Goronyo, you have to fly. Is that not correct? to ensure that the safety applications adhere to. Anybody going from here to Maiduguri, for example, he cannot trek there, he needs to fly. And this costs money. So what we are putting, most of the safety here are supposed to take care of such dams. And of course in Nigeria, where the moment you go for project defense, the first thing is that, what is IGR? So after your expenses, you also put IGR as part of what we are deriving. These are very, very critical, we must do that. So we have for immediate and for high dams, as far as about 7.5 million. How many of those high dams do we have in Nigeria? If for the safety of that, as a department of dam, you go around every year, even if there are 10 multiplied by 7.5, is that not a lot of money? Will your department be looking for money before you operate? We must ensure that these things are done, and they have to be backed up by law. Of course, it's already a law because it's approved by the Standard Organization of Nigeria. And by implication, we must ensure that we do the right thing. So in all this regulator, and that is why the legal department is very important, that completion certificate shall be obtained from registered engineer for the completed work related to dam reservoir maintenance, of course, the various repairs that we have. The regulator shall have the two permits: registration, construction permit, and safety permit. The safety permit is every year, because safety you need to check. And at the end of the year, you need to give them what we call the clean slate, and of course, they have to pay for it. These are very important that we must do. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let us look at some few conclusions. That we say that the Code of Practice provides a framework for identifying and mitigating potential risks associated with reservoir operation, ensuring that the safety of the people and the environment is uppermost. The code establishes the standard guidelines for reservoir operation, maintenance, and emergency response, promoting consistency in terms of the best practice that you have in terms across Nigeria and actually all over the world. We also have the code that provides a clear regulation framework for reservoir operators, ensuring that the compliance with the various relevant laws, regulations, and promoting accountability among dam owners operators are strictly adhered to. By providing the guideline for safe and responsible reservoir operation, the code helps protect lives, property, the environment from potential hazards associated with dam failures and uncontrolled releases. Some few conclusions that dam owners and operators should conduct regular inspections and of course maintenance of reservoir structures to ensure safe and efficient operations. All the owners and the operators should develop and regularly update emergency response plans to address potential hazards and minimize risks to the people. In a situation where the dam has been controlled for 40 years, the gate valve has never been turned once. Now, when you have emergency, how do you release the water? This must stop, and we have to adhere. And of course, the FCC of the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, the dam, must ensure that that is the only way. Nigerians are very law-abiding, provided you tell them that, yes, I'm here to enforce the law, and this must have to be done. Personnel involved in reservoir operation and maintenance should undergo regular training, capacity building to ensure that they have necessary skills and knowledge to perform their duties safely. My brother, he talked about the capacity aspect of it. And that is why even at the Institute, we have 1 week, 2 weeks trainings on a regular basis to update you so that you know exactly that these are very important. And for example, you can never be an inspector if your license is not up to date. Most of us are registered members of Nigerian Society of Engineers, COMEC for the hydrogeologists and the geologists. How many of you have paid your dues for the year? Why the dam owners and the operators are getting license for their dam? It is a must for professional engineers to also register with the professional bodies and pay their dues annually for you to have the license to operate. Dam owners and operators should establish effective communication channels with relevant stakeholders, including the local community, regulatory agencies, emergency response team, to ensure that the timely dissemination of information and coordination are in case of emergency. And of course, strict enforcement of the code by regulatory agencies will bring about sanity in dams and operations in Nigeria. There's no two ways about it. If you are waiting for the Ministry of Sport to come and do your work for you, you cannot succeed by that. You must hold your problems in your hands, and you must ensure that the regulation must be obeyed. There is no shortcut. And I want to appeal, I'm happy that the various management of the dams are here. You must, all the safety for all the dams, both at the state level, at the local government level, they must collect most of this safety plan, engage you, so that when you retire, we keep using you again. What stop for us using Lawa, who has been a director in dam, as a dam inspector? Of course, he will keep working, his brain will keep working, and some money will also be coming in addition to his pension. I hope I'm speaking your mind there, Lawa. All of us one day will retire. Why should we not retire and be begging people for money? No. When their profession has provided for us, the right thing must be done. And I think if we do this, we definitely move forward in terms of dam safety in this country. I want to thank you very much for listening. The other aspect will just be a little bit of, yes, the code itself. I'm not going to read verbatim, just to tell you that the code, the way it came from standard organization before we had this. Now, the people that proposed this is everybody in the country, right from, you can see the list, from the people in the institute, all of us, we championed it. We're walking back and front. We have people from also the Nigeria Integrated Water Commission, the Federal Ministry of Power, Federal Ministry of Environment, Shijoro Hydropower, they're all there. Water resources in terms of the academia are there, River Basin are there. We have the Upper Benue, they're all part of the River Basin. The dam and reservoir inspection, I think it was Engineer Madu that represented us. You have the Lower Benue, they're out there, water resources in the states. The whole idea, because it's a national document, so that everybody is carried along. We also have consultants as part of it, the State Water Board, principal partners, we have state, we have national emergency management, so they cannot say they are not aware. We have standard organization, about 3 of them, and of course they were the secretary, because at the final note, they had to go to their board, their power to do that. And we have the various introduction, the definition of terms that we have in all part of it. We also had quite a lot of the, yes, I hope, yes, sorry, I was just carried away with what I have here. I thought it was operating. So we have quite a lot of the various right from the dam classification, what you have the commissioning as part of it. You also had the emergency, everything I've been talking about, well explained. Who is an engineer, for example? Who is a hydrogeologist? Everything has been. So it's not, it's a standard document that we've looked at. The various roles by the various commissioning, the people that are involved, and what have you. So I think it's about a 100-page document. Then lastly, which is very important, you have most of the forms that are there. The forms that you have for the inspections, because even in most areas, let me just, okay, yes, thank you. Now, yeah, the form, can you, let me go to the form. Can you go to the form there and make it quite fast? Yes, so, yeah. Now, start from the form. Now, even as an inspector, you don't need, you are not reinventing any wheel. All what you required in terms of, what is the name of the dam? What are you looking at? Are you looking at the structure? Are you looking at, the various cracks within the dam? Everything is specified there. So you use the whole of the form to do your analysis and you write your report. And of course, this moves from stage to stage from the approval, and the safety license is issued from there, your observation. So and this is what it's supposed to be, so that at the end of the day, even if you are looking for a license, the form is already there for you to do. And I think I want to, I've agreed that you should have a soft copy of this. Look at the soft copy, look at from the beginning to the end, so that you can look at, acquaint yourself with all the terminologies that are there, the forms, and how to fill them. Everything is quite there. And I think if we do this one, we'll be doing ourselves good, we'll be doing the country good, and in terms of safety, we'll be there. I thank you very much for listening, and God bless all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adube, for the thought-provoking presentation. At this point, I would like to invite the people online to please send in their questions, comments, and observations so that it can be read out, because now we're taking questions, comments, and contributions from the audience. So, tested. Sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a wonderful day spent here. First of all, my apology for coming a little bit late. It was one other scheduled in the office. But here we are, and then I look at this workshop, and I just have to first appreciate whoever has one thing or the other as a role to put up this workshop. It's been so impactful. The papers are wonderful and apt. I want to thank the first presenter, as our colleague, Engineer Alabi, I guess, right? And my colleague, Dr. Marfin, and then the acting Director General from the Institute in Kaduna. Thank you all. I thank the Director Dams for thinking about this, and my sister here, Madam Stella, and everyone. Well, it's just an issue of like making smaller comments and all that. For us at the PPP unit, the small house where I manage, we are the business hub of the Federal Ministry of Water and Sanitation and the government as a whole. Really, we are not so keen about the money, but we're also keen about the money. We make money for government. But when you look at the construction of dam, from study land design, construction, commissioning, and then also decommissioning and whatever, as we have all listened to these presentations, you see that a lot of money is involved. So we believe in value for money. This dam safety has been on the front burner for quite a while. When the bank comes and other development partners, they are so keen about it. Safety in the sense that money has gone into the construction, we must also get value for money. Safety in the sense that if there is calamity, in terms of maybe dam break or whatever, the structure itself is gone, lives and properties are affected and others. So we should place so much emphasis on this. The first presenter, Engineer Alabi, yes, there's so much with this dam safety and all of that, but I also want to add, thank you so much for a precise and comprehensive presentation. Yeah, we talk about emergency preparedness and the rest of them. It's just like when we drive. We have codes for driving. On this right, you turn, trafficate at the roundabout, the man to the left owns the road and all that. But still, we still have accident. We make accident. So I also, in our dam safety, also try to look at the area of dam break studies. It is so important because, yes, of course, we don't have such problem frequently in Nigeria, but globally, when you look at just like seismic and all that, we need to. We know we have finance constraints in most of what we do, but at the same time, anything worth doing is worth doing well. Perhaps maybe existing dams, perhaps maybe the new one we want to embark on. Let us cultivate that habit of doing small studies of dam break, because it's only when you do that studies of dam break that you know, yes, this area is going to be affected, these people is going to be affected, emergency preparedness, we have to evacuate this within certain times and all that. So I will advocate that we also look at dam break studies. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sorry, I just went to find out if the online people have any question, but they are just asking for the presentation. So, the next question, sir.
Good afternoon, all. I want to really start by commending the organizer of this program. Indeed, it's a good program, and I would say it is apt and germane, really, at this point in time when you have dam failures here and there. I will first commend the first presenter. In fact, he has done justice to this presentation. The question is that, how do we go on from there? And crowning it with the last presenter about the code of practice of dam and reservoir operation. A lot of regulatory proposals have been made, though I only heard that the standard organization had buy-in into it. I don't know how far, such that when the enforcement will be required, every law needed will have actually been covered. Such codes, I don't know whether there's a need for it to have the buy-in of the National Assembly or something passed into law or whatever. But the most important thing is, since dam ownership cut across states, individual, and federal government, and there should be a body really empowered to enforce. I want to just quickly draw attention to, yes, you could have done flood mapping, you will have done, dam break studies, but how do you ensure that people do not encroach into such floodplain? So it's a very wild net that we really need great enforcement. I don't know how many of us have gone to Usumada in the recent time. You will see that buildings are almost getting close to the foot of the dam. So which originally maybe it was not there before. So there has to be something that has to be done such that when a floodplain is mapped, there should be a strict enforcement that will guard against people who are out of desperation looking for land to get there. And when the disaster happens, then they will be saying, okay, something has happened. So it is very important we look into that. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank the organizers, join the others that have said so. It's a wonderful program, well organized, well done, and also our lecturers that have taken us. I will start from Engineer Daisy. He has done a very thorough job, and my summary of what he has said is, my name is Engineer Rotimi Agbaminoja. I'm from Dams Department. I would say in the Dams Department, we'll be concentrating on design, construction. Now we are opening to monitoring and inspection, which is dam safety. Now, based on what Engineer Daisy have said, I trying to pick some point for the department. Now, monitoring and inspection, I try to see what I believe they can work upon. Number one, there's a need to update the dam register. Okay, there's a need to update the dam register. I had the opportunity of traveling to Jos recently, and I discovered 3 dams that are not in the dam register. And so, if we update the dam, it's not only just a state, and I discovered 3 that are not in the dam register. So, if we update the dam register, then when we update the dam register, we should concentrate our attention on what are the maintenance needs of this dam. I hope these are being taken. What are the maintenance needs? That is the emergency action plan that this dam needs. Then note the challenges, the rehabilitation need. Then the next one is bridge. When we are doing the study on Kashimbila, if Kashimbila should bridge during the construction, it will reach up Anambra State. So if you have a catastrophe and there is nothing like a monitoring and inspection of this dam to mitigate, which we have been told today. So I believe funding, the federal government should sort from ecological fund how to intervene in this funding problem, so that we can have a means of, not that when allowed dam come up, we start rushing everywhere, start providing solution. Then another thing is capacity building. We need to build capacity of dams operator and also the department of dam. We need to build our capacity to be able to, intervene when necessary. And also training needs. Like this training is very, very essential. We wish. Then I want to take advantage of what Engineer Mina said. Engineer Mina said something that under the World Bank, the TRIMI project, she said that there's a dam safety guideline that needed to be produced. Why not get, and there's a time line for that dam safety guideline to be produced, and trimming is rounding up this month. Why not the department, I don't know, maybe there is a plan on the ground. Why not quickly we put this, what we are doing here, put it together, get this money out, and be able to take advantage of that so that we can use it for, we have more than 400 dams. The dam register does not show us what is the maintenance needs of these dams. So there is a need for us to take care of that. Then the code of practice, Dr. our acting MD of a National Water Resources Institute. Sir, you mentioned something about drilling or piezometer on Guru Dam. When I came to the ministry in 2000, I had the experience of doing something on Guru Dam when there was a lot of intervention by SEC, specialist engineering.
Organizers, the speakers.
Hello? Okay, so that was the key problem with Guru Dam was that it was built on Tacoma soil, silt and sand. Now, sir, what investigation did you do to make sure that this piezometer that you have drilled, because before they could rescue Guru Dam, it took a lot of grouting. Even when the grouting stopped the dam from seepage, nobody knew. Well, we just discovered that the dam stopped seeping. So what did you do? What did you do, sir, to mitigate against this piezometer that were drilled, so that it doesn't have a part on what we already solved earlier, using a lot of money? Then the second one I will ask you, sir, is you talk of decommissioning. I want to ask this question. Is Shagari Dam qualified for decommissioning? Because Shagari Dam is built there, it's not spilling. Shagari Dam, downstream of it, there's a lot of water. So maybe you can do a research on it to know if Shagari Dam, so that we don't have a problem one day, a probable maximum flow come from nowhere and wipe the whole of these people away.
Thank you very much.
So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is from here.
Well, this is just about a response and kind of also a challenge being thrown to the ministry from here, and that is about the issue of enforcement. I was very happy and at the same time very surprised very happy and at the same time very surprised when the code was being discussed, and I realized it is so detailed and all-encompassing. And the question is, how many practitioners are even aware that this code exists? That's number one. Number two, who are responsible for the enforcement? Because that's where the challenge is. And I think it doesn't matter how good or how beautiful the code is on paper, if there is no enforcement, then we have not done anything. And the challenge we are having with that enforcement, or we are going to have, is that the enforcer in court and the defaulter in court are the same. The enforcer is government. The owners of most of these large dams is government. So how will government enforce the codes against itself and make sure that the right things are done here? Number two, the private owners will be surprised to know the number of dams that are privately operated in this country. And I've been opportune to be involved in some of the designs and even construction and supervision. The only people we see coming to site are the people from Ministry of Environment to come and look at the issue of environmental impact assessment. I've been involved in more than 2-3 dams from design to construction, that from beginning to the end, there was nobody from Ministry of Water Resources or Department of Dams to even check out what was going on. And I'm sure that most of those things are not even captured in our register. So the issue of the enforcement of this code is something that we have to come up with a way that it can be done very effectively, which will help us a lot. Number two, my big brother engineer Cycles was talking about the issue of dam break. I said during that presentation that fundamental to any emergency action plan or any emergency preparedness plan is the issue of the dam break. Because the action plan, the emergency preparedness is all resting on the assumptions or the conclusions of the dam break, because it's the dam break that will give us the inundation maps, the inundation areas, the extent, the depth, and all that. And if we don't have that, whatever we do as emergency action plan, at best, will be mostly guesswork or an assumption. So that's why we said, under this issue of dam safety, now that Spain is looking at dam safety as a major part of the component, I think we should seize this opportunity, especially most of our large dams, to review the dam break studies. Some have been done, but they are years away, and we need to review them and know what is the current thing, so that any other thing we are building on that can be accurate and can be up to date. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon. All protocol duly observed. I have a question or contribution on two issues. I am Engineer Ekrigwe, retired Deputy Director of Dams. Now, from the discussion and presentation so far, to my own little understanding and knowledge, I discovered that the issue of dam safety lies on three tripods: in the design, in the construction, and in the management. But more especially in the management, which is what we are treating today. From one of the ICO meetings I attended, I decided to fall under the cost financial subcommittee, and I discovered that most of the countries that came from their different committee to come to the NICO, most of them gave the breakdown of their financial commitment to dam development and management. I discovered that in the design, they allocated like 30%. In the construction, like 30%. But in the management, where monitoring and other things comes up, they have 40%. But we can all know that this is the opposite in this country. You get some little money to design, hurry them up to finish their design in 3 or 4, maximum 6 months. But in the out cost, why they had 30% was that they give the design for about 2-3 years, while the construction is 1 year. No, the management is as far as the life of the dam is concerned. So my contribution here now is that all that we are saying, all the presenter mentioned it, the criteria, the ingredient of safety of the dam is in the management. And about 2 speakers, especially the first speaker, Engineer Alabi, he mentioned that when you look at the budget of the department in the past 4 years, you are ahead of it. That is not right. If you allocate much to the management of the dam, in that case, you cover all these things that are happening in the safety of the dam. I think if it is proper, because this conference, this workshop, I score it as an international workshop. Let's give ourselves a hand of applause. Especially the presenters. I'm even, if I have opportunity to prepare, to present such papers, that means I have to work harder to beat this one they have done. They have done very well. So if it's right, I think the organizer or the management or the head of dams, we should make a strong remarks and send to the government that more money should be provided in the budget for the monitoring of dams in Nigeria. If not, all these things we mentioned, we are all talking of Akpalakpala, is money. You cannot achieve them except you have the money. Thank you. That's number one. Number two, the AGED, Water Institute, talk about this commissioning. I wanted to ask, sir, is it possible to discommission what we have not commissioned? Because like myself now, I joined a ministry some time ago. Some dams were were started, but not commissioned up to today, until I left the ministry early this year. Some dams were started. That's about 25, 26 years ago. They have not been completed. They have not been commissioned. But those dams that are threat to the downstream users, they are not completed, and I don't think they'll be completed anytime from now, all because of fund anyway. So now, what do we do to decommission those dams for the safety of the downstream? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I'll take the last question from Dr. Mazu. He's online, so the technical people should please cue him.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can.
Am I muted, please?
We can hear you, sir. You can go ahead.
Can you hear me? Hello, good afternoon.
We can hear you, sir. You can go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the Department of Dams for organizing this wonderful workshop or capacity building or awareness and sensitization on dam safety. I have listened to all the presentations. They have mentioned the past, the present, and even the future of dam safety and operations. I was a dam operator before I became a dam owner. That was my last appointment was of Upper Benue River Basin Authority. I handed over just exactly 1 year ago in June last year. So the presentations have mentioned everything that is needed on dam safety operations and maintenance. But the mother of all evil is funding. As somebody mentioned, if somebody wants to travel, inspect a dam, he needs a flight ticket. If you want to maintain a dam or pay some dam instrumentation observers, you have to pay them their salaries, their allowances. But as long as I was in the river basin for over 35 years, there was nothing like safety allowances. 1, 2, every dam, large, small, or medium capital projects that are expected to generate income, revenue. The policy aspect I want to recall was done in 1992, TCPC, they call it TCPC, Technical Committee on Privatization and Commercialization of Government Infrastructure. And the idea is for those agencies responsible for operation and maintenance of these facilities, providing services, water, especially for dams, water for irrigation, water for power, water for drinking, and they are expected to get money for services provided in form of revenue. So that policy of TCPC in 1992 was that the river basins were allowed to utilize those IGR generated for the operations and maintenance of these dams. And when I was a dam operator at that time, I was a project manager in 1990, almost 10 years, project manager, and I was generating revenue sufficient enough to maintain the dam and even pay salaries. But as policies kept on changing, apart from paying tax and VAT, of recent, we were asked to remit 25% to federal inland revenue under consolidated revenue fund when single treasury account was established. And then before I left as a managing director, from 25% remittance, we were asked to remit 50%. And you can remember, over 30 years ago, the value of our currency has crashed by more than 300%. When I was a dam manager, I don't spend more than 5 million naira for all the operations and maintenance, and there was no contract in operation and maintenance of dam. We do everything by direct labor. In fact, even my monthly interest was only 5,000, and I was able to manage the dam. But now, of risk, we were asked to remit 100% of the IGR because we receive budget, we receive more annual budgetary allocations from federal government. But all of us who served in the public sector, we know that if you are asking for 100 million, you may end up getting 10 million or 20 million, which may not even pay for the security of the facility you are maintaining. Let's not talk about maintenance. Apart from maintenance, we have dams that were built 40 years ago. Some equipment need replacement. And if you are to replace equipment for dam instrumentation, I think you have to order them from abroad. And we all know, those of us who worked in the public sector, the procurement procedure for bringing in equipment from abroad, you have to get in contact with manufacturers. And most of these agencies don't have the capacity or permission to bring in equipment from abroad from your meager budget. So the issue of all the challenges we are facing now on operations and maintenance of dams is not the technical know-how that is lacking, but the policy need to be reviewed, such that dam managers and operators or owners should be able to generate revenue. In fact, even the revenue some people don't even pay, and no enforcement is made to ensure that everybody has paid. We have some services that we were providing for 30 years to state governments, water supply. They have never paid a single kobo. And we have public-private partnership arrangement where we were supplying over 3 billion cubic meters of water to generate hydroelectricity. For the past 4 years, since that dam started generating power, I don't think the river basin has received even 1 kobo for water rates. So I think the panel should take into account this issue of the RBDS should be self-sustaining, provided the services they are providing, provided they are providing services to stakeholders, whether private or government or individuals, and they should be allowed to use their money to maintain and operate those dams. And there must be periodic review of the rates for water rates, I can say, services provided. There must be review in consonance with the inflationary trends. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you for staying with us to this time. We appreciate you. At this point, I'll hand over the mic to the Director of Dams and Reservoir Operations to answer the questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. I think let me start from the last one question to me. Is it possible to decommission what has not been completed or commissioned? Now let's get it very clear. When you decommission a dam, we are not looking at it from the ceremonial aspect. It's like you are removing those structures you've put in to have the dam and removing them in such a way that you don't have a lot of adverse effect on the community, on the environment, and restoring everything like the rivers to the normal condition. You understand? Now, commission is just ceremonial aspects of cutting the tape, and everybody claps and that's so. But we are talking of the commission. The commission can be from different perspectives. It's possible that the dam, when it was constructed, has a lot of issues after some time and is not being used for what purpose it's supposed to be. For example, if a dam was for irrigation purposes and over the years, probably the soil is not very fertile for such irrigation, and people are not even utilizing it, they can decide to decommission it. Then you restore back the river to its normal condition. Now, the process of decommissioning, that you are removing those infrastructures and restoring back the river so that it can flow back and reviving the ecosystem that was there before. So let's get it clear. The commissioning is quite different from the ceremonial commissioning. I also had some private owners and enforcement and all that. Yes, enforcement is the will. Let me give you a typical example. When we were small in the primary school, we had these sanitary inspectors. They come to our school. If you have a restaurant, they go to the house, they inspect, they look at the back, your hotel where you are cooking your food and everything, especially those mama puts. They look at it, how good is the place. They even go to private home to see whether you have toilet facilities. They never had police. They never had armies. But everybody respected those people because there is a government will for them to do it. If, for example, in the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, our police is the Integrated Water Resources Commission and the Department of Dams and Reservoir. So if, for instance, a dam is being established without the permits, they can decide to arrange both of them and get some police to ensure that the place is closed. I don't know federal government. I don't know working for the federal government. So you have to also know your rights. There are a lot of people who have been evacuated from their houses just by court pronouncement. The court doesn't go there. The judge doesn't go there. They will take police and they will use order to do that. So you have all those things with you. The truth of it is that we need to be more proactive. A situation where we think that people are bigger than the society is wrong. If you as a common person wants to have a dam now, you can't just have it. But if I'm a general or I'm a very big person in society and I want to have a dam, I will go ahead and have it. So what we are saying is that we need to respect our laws, and the agencies that are responsible for that must ensure that they exercise those rights. The Federal Ministry is well established, and if you want to ensure that those dams are policed and ensure that the things are done, why can't you get police and ensure that those things are enforced? Who is aware of the existence of Yes, the standard organization is just a process. We brought them in. They said any code that you have to design, establish. They don't design any code. They don't write any code. Agencies, individuals, especially of governments, they are the ones that actually, put this code together. But the law says that anything that has to do with code, the standard organization has the right by mandate to do it. So we involve them. To be short, most of the time they are the secretariat, official secretariat for approval. And that code must be approved by their own board. Now, by the time we do all the work and they approve it by the board, it becomes law. We cannot go ahead and they first of all print it their own, come back to the ministry, we can do all those ones and launch and do whatever it is. So that is how it works. Now, in terms of why people don't know, if you recall, the council, the National Council, I think of 2017, 2018, when we were championing the code itself, we did presented this to the Council of Water Resources. But as information memo, first of all, as an action memo, then we followed with the progress in terms of where we are and what we are doing and all that. But the problem is that as soon as we leave the National Council of Water Resources, nobody even remembered there's anything that was talked about. So it's not left for us, especially those who are champions, those who are concerned, the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, the various departments, and especially the dams, and of course, cascade it down to the states. The states are members of the council. All the honorable commissioners are members. the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, the chairman, and they have to also move down to the state. Yes, it's possible that just like most of the document we have, the state may not even be aware. It's not that they are not aware. Probably the guy who was the permanent, who was the commissioner there, as soon as he comes back, he just left the documents in his house and he goes back to the office and he dies there. So we need to, as agency, to keep trying as much as possible to enlighten people, disseminate the information like what we are now. I've just said that the code will be distributed free so that you have the soft copy, and when you go back to establishment, do the same thing too until it gets to where it's supposed to get to. I think this is the only way we can do that. I talked about what is the investigation regarding to Goronyo. There's no way we could have just moved in there. I gave you the various lithological aspects. I gave you all aspects that has to do with the clay layer, the layer 1, layer 2, all the embankment material. I never got this from my head. We first of all did a lot of investigations. Then we now drill to confirm whether those embankments are there. The first layer of clay is there. The second layer is there. Now, what aspects are we expecting the leakages from? So you now look at it and you install your piezometer in such a way that if there are leakages from any of those embankments, of course it's going to go into the flow wells. And you start monitoring to see whether what you are doing is. So we don't just do anything blindly. A lot of this thing were actually done. Let me even tell you, a lot of geophysical, subsurface geophysics was done using electrical, for instance, the point resistivity, spontaneous potential. We also use gamma and the caliper to be able to determine what you have in those. So those are a lot of investigation that was done. Now, in areas where we didn't have data, we use the electrical resistivity, using first of all profiles. Now, after the profile, we follow with the vertical electrical sounding to ascertain what depth you have most of those layers. So detailed investigation was done to ascertain that. I think I've managed to accept. I think those are the things that were actually directed to me. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, the last speaker. I will start with the work of the MC by recognizing in our midst our Oga, our senior colleague, Engineer Emo Ofie, who just stepped in when the presentation was going on. I don't blame the MC because she might not know. He looks youthful, you know. So thanks to Madame for doing the good job. Let me also start by thanking all the resource persons for the wonderful presentation. In fact, they are all consummate professionals, you know, in their own different fields of endeavors. Sincerely speaking, if I had given the chance to speak from the beginning, I may have contributed more. But it's like some people were just behind my mind and they have said what I needed to have said earlier. Despite that, I think I still have maybe a few things to add. I'm happy the first speaker withdrew the idea that we did not have guidelines on dam safety in Nigeria when presentation was made by Engineer Dr. Matthew. You know. So we are very grateful he has withdrawn that, having understood that yes, it exists. But I think our concern is that the core of practice does not translate to act. That was why it's difficult for us to enforce some of those things we mentioned. We don't have stick. We can't use stick to beat on any defaulter because it's not backed by any act. In the United States, for instance, they have National Dam Safety Act and different, punishment, sanctions, responsible for every aspect of default has been specifically spelled out. But in our own case, we don't have it. But I think we are getting there because we have started doing something reasonably to that, on that respect. In Nigeria, for instance, we've been lucky, because though we don't have authority-ensured compliance, but then we have individual ensured compliance. What I mean by this is every designer of any dam will always ensure that he does that according to specifications. He knows the implication. If he designs a dam and it fails, his license may be removed from him. So everybody tries to be very careful to ensure that he does that. That's why we are recording very little cases of dam failures in Nigeria. But then, for us to have it, harmonized copy, we definitely will have to go to the National Assembly for legislation. I want to thank you very much for your time, and I think I'll stop here, and tomorrow is another day we'll continue. Thank you, and God bless everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. I have a few announcements. I would like to please crave the indulgence of the participants. Tomorrow, we should please stand on punctuality. We're going to start on time, 9 o'clock, and tomorrow promises to be very interesting, thought-provoking papers, panel discussion, and a lot of networking. So please come on time so that we can start and get the program rolling. At this point, we have come to the conclusion of today's event and workshop. So you have lunch at the back, and just like we did in the morning, we'll allow the high table to first take their lunch, have their seats, then we can go on the left-hand side and the right-hand side and take our lunch too. We did it so perfectly in the morning, so I know we can replicate it. Thank you very much for your time. God bless you. Thank you for being here with us.